Human blood splattered the cargo bay as vicious alien warbeasts tore into the station's defenders. 1,000 genetically engineered monstrosities against a mere handful of humans and one dog. Harry Morales, a grizzled ex-marine turned space trucker, had arrived at the remote Epsilon 9 moon base mere hours ago to deliver critical medical supplies. His only companion was Max, a loyal German shepherd enhanced with the latest genetic engineering. Little did Harry know that his pit stop would turn into a desperate fight for survival. Epsilon 9, a vital refueling depot on the border between human and Ferengi space, had always been a flashpoint of tensions. The fierce Ferengi used aggressive trade practices and vicious warbeasts to bully competitors. With border skirmishes escalating, the base had become a powder keg waiting to explode. Upon arriving, Base Commander Colonel Jack Thompson warned Harry about the Ferengi traders on base, led by a hulking brute named Yaksa. Harry could feel Max's hackles raise as he watched the aliens argue with a human merchant. He should have trusted the dog's instincts. Just as Harry was about to leave, a massive explosion rocked the base. Alarm screamed as Colonel Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're under heavy assault by Ferengi warbeasts. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill." Harry checked his ship's refueling status. Only 75%. Not enough to break orbit and escape. He exchanged a glance with Max, seeing the same grim determination in the dog's eyes. If they wanted to survive, they'd have to fight their way out. 1,000 slavering alien warbeasts against one man and his dog. The odds were beyond impossible, but they had no choice. It was kill or be killed. Harry's pulse raced as he glanced at the fuel gauge on his ship's console. 75%. Not enough to break orbit. Not enough to escape the horror unfolding on Epsilon 9. In a split second, he made his choice. He couldn't run, not with innocent lives at stake. Grabbing his trusty pulse rifle and a box of armor-piercing rounds from the Orion's cargo hold, Harry charged out into the fray, Max bounding alongside him. As they sprinted towards the base's main entrance, Harry nearly collided with a group of panicked civilians desperate to escape the carnage. Among the frightened faces, he recognized Dr. Emily Chen, the base's lead xenobiologist. Her usually calm demeanor had been replaced by sheer terror. "Harry," she gasped, grabbing his arm. "The Ferengi, they've brought a new kind of warbeast. Bigger, faster, more vicious than anything we've seen before. I think they were designed specifically to hunt humans." A chill ran down Harry's spine at the implications, but there was no time to dwell on it now. "Get to the shelter," he ordered, ushering the civilians towards a secure bunker within the base. "Stay put until help arrives." With the civilians safe, Harry and Max raced outside, pulse rifle at the ready. The scene that greeted them was like something out of a nightmare. Colonel Thompson and a handful of Marines were locked in a desperate battle against 6 monstrous warbeasts, each one the size of a grizzly bear with claws like scythes and multiple rows of razor-sharp teeth. The creatures' hides seemed to shrug off standard pulse rounds like they were nothing. Marines fell left and right, their screams mingling with the beasts' savage roars. Thompson himself was bleeding from a gash on his forehead, barely holding his own against 2 of the monsters. Harry raised his rifle and squeezed the trigger, sending a burst of armor-piercing rounds straight into the skull of the nearest warbeast. The creature dropped like a stone, its hideous face frozen in a final snarl. But Harry's victory was short-lived. Alerted to the new threat, the remaining warbeasts whirled to face him, their eyes blazing a hellish red in the dim moonlight. Howling for blood, they charged. Max's powerful jaws clamped down on the warbeast's neck, tearing at its leathery hide as the two rolled across the blood-soaked ground. The dog's enhanced physiology allowed him to match the creature's strength, buying Harry precious seconds to regain his composure. With adrenaline surging through his veins, Harry raised his pulse rifle once more and fired a barrage of armor-piercing rounds at the remaining warbeasts. 2 of the monstrosities fell, their bodies riddled with smoking holes, but the rest kept coming, their eyes filled with an insatiable hunger for human flesh. Realizing he was outmatched, Harry retreated into a nearby building, slamming the door shut behind him. Inside, he found a group of wounded Marines, their faces etched with pain and fear. Among them was Sergeant Mike Reynolds, a man Harry recognized from his days in the Corps. "Harry!" Reynolds gasped, clutching a gaping wound in his side. "The Ferengi, they're inside the base. The Warbeasts were just a distraction." And a cold sense of dread settled in Harry's gut as the pieces fell into place. The attack on the base wasn't just about killing humans. It was a heist. And Yaxer, the Ferengi leader he had encountered earlier, was likely the mastermind behind it all. Leaving the Marines to tend to their wounds, Harry ventured back out into the base's corridors, his senses on high alert. He moved silently through the shadows, his pulse rifle at the ready. It wasn't long before he encountered a group of Ferengi soldiers ransacking one of the labs, stuffing their pockets with valuable tech. Harry's combat training kicked in as he engaged the Ferengi in close-quarters battle. He used his knowledge of their physiology to his advantage, targeting vulnerable spots like their oversized ears and bulbous eyes. The aliens fell one by one, their bodies crumpling to the floor. Just then Max came bounding around the corner, his muzzle stained with Warbeast blood. The dog had survived his encounter with the creature and tracked Harry down using his enhanced senses. Together, man and dog followed Yaxer's scent through the base, navigating a maze of corridors and abandoned labs. The trail led them to the central control room, where they found the Ferengi leader hunched over a computer terminal, his thick fingers flying across the keys as he attempted to download classified data. Harry raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. "Step away from the console, Yaxer," he ordered, his voice cold as steel. "It's over." The Ferengi turned slowly, a wicked grin spreading across his face. "On the contrary, human," he sneered, reaching for a hidden weapon. "It's only just begun." Yaxer's eyes glinted with malice as he faced Harry across the control room. "You want to know why we attacked this pathetic base? It was merely a test run for our new breed of warbeasts, designed to hunt down and exterminate humans like the vermin you are." Harry's grip tightened on his pulse rifle. "What are you talking about?" Rage boiled up inside Harry. He lunged forward, intent on taking Yaxer down, but the Ferengi was ready for him. With a flick of his wrist, Yaxer activated a hidden control panel, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a nightmarish creature unlike anything Harry had ever seen. It was a warbeast, but one that had been twisted and augmented far beyond the ones he had fought outside. Its body was a mass of rippling muscle and armored plates, with multiple limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. Its eyes blazed with a feral intelligence, and Harry could see a web of neural implants embedded in its skull. Yaxer grinned, his teeth glinting in the dim light. "Meet my pet, human. It's been waiting for a chance to play." With a roar that shook the room, the creature leapt at Harry, its claws outstretched. He barely managed to dodge aside, firing a burst from his rifle that glanced off the beast's armored hide. Max sprang to his defense, his powerful jaws snapping at the creature's legs, but it simply batted the dog aside with a casual swipe of its claws. Harry and Max fought desperately, trying to find a weakness in the creature's defenses, but it was too fast, too strong. Its claws raked across Harry's chest, sending him stumbling back in a spray of blood. Max leapt at its throat, but the creature caught him in mid-air and slammed him to the ground, leaving the dog lying motionless on the floor. Through a haze of pain, Harry saw the creature looming over him, its jaws open in a triumphant snarl. He tried to raise his rifle, but his arms wouldn't respond. This was it, he realized. This was how he was going to die. But just as the creature was about to strike, the door to the control room burst open, and Colonel Thompson charged in, a squad of Marines at his back. They opened fire on the creature, their weapons blazing, and it reeled back, its hide punctured by a dozen wounds. Harry struggled to his feet, ignoring the agony that lanced through his body. Together, he and the Marines poured everything they had into the creature, hammering it with armor-piercing rounds until finally it collapsed to the floor, its body twitching in its death throes. But Yaxer was gone, vanished in the chaos of the battle, and as medics rushed to tend to Harry's wounds, Colonel Thompson pulled him aside, his face grim. "That was just the beginning," he said. Our intelligence reports indicate that the Ferengi are massing a huge force of these new warbeasts near the border. They're preparing for a full-scale invasion of human space. Harry's mind reeled at the implications. If the Ferengi succeeded, it would mean the end of everything he had ever known, the end of humanity itself. He looked down at Max, who was being tended to by a medic. The dog's breathing was shallow, but he was alive, barely. Harry's fists clenched at his sides. He didn't know how, but he was going to stop the Ferengi. He was going to make them pay for what they had done, no matter the cost. Harry gritted his teeth as the medics finished patching up his wounds. The pain was excruciating, but it paled in comparison to the rage burning in his heart. He couldn't let the Ferengi get away with this. He couldn't let them unleash their war beasts on innocent humans. Ignoring the protests of the medical staff, Harry pushed himself to his feet. "I'm going after them," he growled, his voice rough with pain and determination. "I'm going to stop this invasion before it starts." Colonel Thompson's face was lined with concern. "You're in no shape to fight, Harry. You need to rest and heal." But Harry shook his head. "There's no time. If we don't act now, it'll be too late." He looked Thompson in the eye, his gaze unwavering. "I'm the best chance we've got. Let me lead a team to infiltrate their staging area. We'll gather intel on their Warbeast program and find a way to stop it." Thompson hesitated, clearly torn, but finally he nodded. "All right, but you're not going alone. I'll assign a squad of my best Marines to accompany you, and take Max with you. You'll need all the help you can get." As Harry and his team geared up for the mission, Dr. Chen caught up with them, her face alight with excitement. "Harry, I think I may have found a way to stop the Warbeasts," she said breathlessly. "I've been analyzing their DNA, and I believe I can create a targeted bioweapon that will only affect them. It won't harm humans or any other species." Harry's eyes widened. "That could change everything. Can you do it?" Dr. Chen nodded. "I'm close, but I need more samples from a live warbeast to complete the formula. If you could capture one during your mission—" Harry's mouth set in a grim line. Capturing a live warbeast would be incredibly dangerous, but if it meant stopping the Ferengi invasion, it was a risk he was willing to take. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll bring you your specimen." With Max at his side and a squad of battle-hardened Marines at his back, Harry boarded the cloaked dropship that would take them deep into Ferengi space. As they approached the staging area, the ship's sensors began to pick up strange readings from the planet's surface. "I'm detecting massive heat signatures and seismic activity," the pilot reported, his brow furrowed in confusion, "but it doesn't match any known geological patterns." Harry leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Take us in closer. I want to see what's down there." As the dropship descended towards the planet's surface, the truth became clear. The Ferengi had constructed vast underground breeding facilities, sprawling complexes where thousands of war beasts were being grown and trained for war. Harry's heart sank as he took in the scope of the operation. This was no mere border skirmish. The Ferengi were preparing for a full-scale invasion of human space, and if they succeeded, it would mean the end of everything he had ever known. The dropship landed on the outskirts of the staging area, and Harry and his team disembarked, their weapons at the ready. Max's hackles were raised, a low growl rumbling in his throat as he caught the scent of the warbeasts. Harry checked his rifle one last time, feeling the weight of the armor-piercing rounds in the magazine. He looked around at his team, seeing the same grim determination in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. "All right, listen up," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Our mission is to infiltrate the breeding facility and gather as much intel as we can on the warbeasts. We need to know their numbers, their capabilities, and any weaknesses we can exploit." He paused, his gaze settling on each member of the team in turn. "But that's not all. We also need to capture a live specimen for Dr. Chen. It's the only way to stop this invasion before it begins." The Marines nodded, their faces set with resolve. They knew the risks, but they also knew what was at stake. Together, they set out towards the breeding facility, moving silently through the shadows. Harry could feel his heart pounding in his chest, every nerve in his body on high alert. As they drew closer, the sounds of the warbeasts grew louder, the snarls and howls of 1,000 nightmares given flesh. Harry's grip tightened on his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. They were walking into the heart of the enemy's stronghold, a place where death lurked around every corner. But Harry knew they had no choice. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Silently, he signaled for the team to move forward. It was time to face the horrors that awaited them. Harry's heart pounded against his ribs as he led his team into the depths of the Ferengi breeding facility. The narrow, dimly lit tunnels were lined with strange, organic-looking machinery that pulsed and thrummed with an eerie green light. The air grew thicker and more oppressive with each step, carrying the pungent stench of the warbeasts. Low growls and snarls echoed through the complex, a constant reminder of the horrors that lurked within. Max padded silently at Harry's side, his enhanced senses on high alert for any sign of danger. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the team came across a central laboratory. Through the reinforced glass windows, they could see Ferengi scientists conducting gruesome experiments on live warbeasts. The creatures writhed and howled in agony as they were subjected to painful procedures and injected with glowing green substances. Harry's stomach turned as he watched one of the scientists, a particularly sadistic-looking Ferengi, drive a long needle into the base of a warbeast's skull. The creature let out an ear-splitting shriek, its body convulsing violently against its restraints. With a series of hand signals, he directed his team to take up positions around the lab. On his count, they stormed inside, catching the Ferengi scientists off guard. The Marines made short work of the guards, while Harry and Max cornered the lead scientist, a quivering wretch named Dr. Zorg. Harry slammed Zorg against the wall, his forearm pressed against the Ferengi's throat. "Talk," he growled, his eyes blazing with barely contained fury. "What's the endgame here? What are you planning?" Under duress, Zorg spilled everything. The Ferengi had been working on the Warbeast project for years, ever since they first encountered humans and realized they couldn't compete with them technologically. The creatures were designed to be the ultimate biological weapon, capable of overwhelming human defenses through sheer numbers and savagery. "The invasion," Zorg wheezed, his bulbous eyes wide with fear. "It begins in days. Thousands of warbeasts loaded onto warships. They'll be unleashed on your colonies, your worlds. You'll be overrun, wiped out. Nothing can stop them." Harry's blood ran cold at the revelation. They were running out of time. He knocked Zorg unconscious with a swift blow to the head and turned to his team. "We need to exfiltrate now. Grab any data you can and let's go." A group of heavily armed Ferengi guards burst into the lab, led by none other than Yaxer himself. The Ferengi leader's eyes gleamed with malice as he leveled his weapon at Harry. "Going somewhere, human?" A fierce firefight erupted, pulse rounds and energy beams crisscrossing the lab in a deadly light show. Max leapt into the fray, his powerful jaws clamping down on a guard's arm, dragging him to the ground. The Marines fought with grim determination, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. "Fall back!" Harry shouted over the chaos, laying down covering fire as his team retreated into the hallway. But in the confusion he found himself cut off from the others, alone in a dimly lit chamber filled with cages containing snarling warbeasts. And there, standing between him and the exit, was Yaxer, a cruel smile playing across his lips. The Ferengi leader raised his weapon, a predator's gleam in his eyes. "Looks like it's just you and me now, human. Time to see what you're really made of." Harry circled Yaxer warily, pulse rifle at the ready, as the Ferengi leader grinned at him with sadistic glee. The warbeasts in their cages snarled and howled, their eyes glinting with feral hunger in the dim light. "You're too late, human," Yaxer sneered, his muscles coiled like springs beneath his leathery skin. "The invasion has already begun. Soon your worlds will be overrun by my creations, and your kind will be nothing more than prey for them to hunt." Harry's grip tightened on his rifle. "Not if I have anything to say about it." With a roar of fury, Yaksa launched himself at Harry, moving with impossible speed and strength. Harry barely managed to sidestep the charge, but Yaksa was on him in an instant, his fists hammering down like pistons. Harry staggered back, blood trickling from a split lip. He knew he couldn't match Yaksa's raw power head-on. He had to be smart, use his environment to his advantage. Ducking behind a row of cages, Harry fired off a burst from his rifle, forcing Yaksa to take cover. The Ferengi snarled in frustration, his eyes darting around the room in search of his prey. "You can't hide forever, human," he bellowed, smashing his fist against a cage and sending the warbeast inside into a frenzy. "I will have my revenge for what your kind did to my family." Harry's eyes widened in surprise. He hadn't expected Yaksa to have a personal stake in this war, but he couldn't let that distract him. Too much was at stake. Spotting an opening, Harry lunged forward, tackling Yaksa around the waist and sending them both crashing into a cage. The warbeast inside howled in rage, its claws scrabbling against the bars as it tried to reach them. For a moment, the two combatants grappled on the floor, each trying to gain the upper hand. Harry managed to wrap his arm around Yaksa's neck, applying pressure to the Ferengi's windpipe. But Yaksa was too strong, too fast. With a burst of strength, he broke free of Harry's grip and slammed him against the cage, stunning him. Harry's vision swam as Yaksa loomed over him, a cruel smile on his lips. The Ferengi's hand closed around his throat, squeezing with crushing force. Harry scrabbled at Yaksa's fingers, but it was like trying to pry open a steel trap. Just as he felt his consciousness slipping away, a familiar bark echoed through the chamber. Max burst into the room, his teeth bared in a snarl of rage. The loyal dog launched himself at Yaksa, latching onto his arm and dragging him away from Harry. Yaksa howled in pain and fury, trying to shake Max off, but the dog held on with grim determination, buying Harry the precious seconds he needed to recover. Staggering to his feet, Harry snatched up his rifle and took aim at Yaksa's head. The Ferengi's eyes widened in fear as he realized his fate. "This ends now," Harry growled, pulling the trigger. The pulse round struck Yaksa square between the eyes, dropping him like a stone. Max released his grip on the Ferengi's arm, padding over to Harry's side and nuzzling his hand. Together, man and dog raced through the facility's twisting corridors, following the sounds of gunfire and shouting. They burst out into a cavernous hangar bay, just as the rest of Harry's team was fighting their way towards a waiting dropship, pulse rifles blazing. Harry and Max sprinted across the hangar, dodging pulse rounds and energy beams as the Ferengi guards tried to cut them down. They leapt aboard the dropship just as its engines roared to life, lifting off from the deck and soaring out into the inky blackness of space. As they cleared the planet's atmosphere, Harry slumped against the bulkhead, his chest heaving with exertion. He looked around at his battered team, seeing the same mixture of relief and grim determination in their eyes. "Colonel Thompson," he said, activating his comlink. "We've got the intelligence and the sample, but it's worse than we thought. The Ferengi are already launching their invasion." Thompson's voice crackled over the link, heavy with fatigue and stress. "Understood. We're mobilizing every ship and soldier we have, but it may not be enough. We need a weakness, something we can exploit." Harry glanced at the container, holding the green substance they'd retrieved from the breeding facility. "Dr. Chen is our best hope," he said. "If anyone can find a way to stop these things, it's her." "Then get back to Epsilon 9 on the double," Thompson ordered. "We're counting on you, Harry. The fate of the Terran Confederacy is in your hands." "First universe too, then Stika." Harry's pulse raced as he and his team fought their way out of the overrun colony, warbeasts snapping at their heels. Max led the charge, his enhanced senses guiding them through the maze of blood-soaked streets. Lila, the young Ferengi girl, clung to Harry's back, her eyes wide with fear and determination. As they burst through the colony gates and raced towards their waiting ship, Harry's mind reeled with the implications of what they had discovered. The warbeasts were not just biological horrors, but cybernetic nightmares, controlled by the Ferengi through a network of implants. "The implants," Lila gasped as they stumbled aboard the ship. "They're the key to stopping them." Harry turned to face her, his brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "My father," Lila explained, her voice trembling. "He discovered a weakness in the Warbeasts' design. The implants that control them, they're vulnerable to electromagnetic pulses. A strong enough EMP would fry their systems, render them helpless." Hope surged through Harry's veins at her words. He slammed his fist on the ship's intercom. "Dr. Chen, do you read me?" "Loud and clear, Harry," came the xenobiologist's reply, her voice strained with exhaustion. "I have new intel on the Warbeasts. They're cyborgs controlled by implants, and those implants are vulnerable to EMPs." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. Then Dr. Chen's voice crackled with renewed energy. "Of course. It makes sense now. The strange readings we've been getting, the way they're able to coordinate their attacks. If we can generate a strong enough EMP... You'll fry those implants and stop the Warbeasts in their tracks," Harry finished, a grim smile spreading across his face. "I'll get my team working on a device immediately. But Harry, even if we succeed, the Ferengi fleet is still coming. Colonel Thompson is rallying our forces, but I don't know if it will be enough." Harry's jaw tightened. He knew what he had to do. "Keep working on that EMP, Doc. I'll buy you the time you need." As the ship docked at Epsilon 9, Harry pulled Lila aside. He had to know the truth. "Why are you helping us?" he asked, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deception. Lila met his gaze unflinchingly. "I never wanted this," she whispered, her voice heavy with shame. "My father's work, the Warbeasts, the invasion. I tried to stop it from the inside, but they discovered me. I had to flee." She took a deep, shuddering breath. "Helping you, it's my chance to make things right, to stop the bloodshed before it's too late." Harry nodded slowly, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. He turned to watch as Dr. Chen and her team raced to assemble the EMP device, their faces etched with determination. Time was running out. The Ferengi fleet had entered the solar system, their warships bristling with weaponry and teeming with Warbeasts. Colonel Thompson's voice crackled over the intercom, rallying the Terran Confederacy's defenses for a last desperate stand. Harry's fists clenched at his sides. He knew what he had to do. "Doc," he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos of the lab, "is the EMP ready?" Dr. Chen looked up from her work, her face lined with exhaustion. "It's as ready as it's going to be," she replied grimly. "But, Harry, it has a limited range. You'll have to get it inside the Ferengi flagship for it to take out their entire fleet." Harry nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I understand it's a one-way trip." But Max refused to budge, his teeth bared in a stubborn growl. And then Lila was there, her hand on Harry's shoulder. "I'm coming with you," she said, her voice brooking no argument. "I know those ships inside and out. You'll need my help to get to the flagship undetected." Harry wanted to protest, to keep them both out of harm's way, but he knew he couldn't do this alone. With a final nod, he stood up, the EMP device clutched in his hands. Together they raced towards the hangar bay, towards the waiting dropship that would carry them into the heart of the enemy fleet. Harry's heart pounded in his chest as he strapped himself into the pilot's seat, Max and Lila at his side. He knew the odds of survival were slim. But if this was to be his final mission, his last stand against the darkness, then he would face it head-on. For the sake of all humanity, he would fight to his last breath. Harry's heart raced as he piloted the small, fast ship through the chaos of the battle raging around them. Lila sat beside him, her fingers flying across the ship's controls as she used her knowledge of Ferengi technology to help them evade detection. Max crouched behind them, his hackles raised and a low growl rumbling in his throat. As they approached the Ferengi flagship, Harry's grip tightened on the controls. This was it, their one chance to end the Warbeast threat once and for all. Failure was not an option. With Lila's guidance, they managed to slip past the flagship's defenses and dock in one of its hangar bays. As they exited the ship, Harry clutched the EMP device close to his chest, his pulse rifle at the ready. The corridors of the Ferengi ship were dimly lit and eerily quiet, the only sound the distant thrum of the engines. Max padded ahead of them, his nose to the ground as he searched for any sign of danger. Suddenly, a group of Ferengi soldiers appeared from around a corner, their weapons drawn. Harry and Lila dove for cover as pulse rounds filled the air, the acrid scent of ozone filling their nostrils. Harry leaned out from behind a bulkhead and fired off a burst of rounds, dropping 2 of the Ferengi where they stood. Lila, meanwhile, used her knowledge of the ship's layout to guide them through a series of maintenance tunnels, bypassing the main corridors and avoiding the bulk of the Ferengi forces. After what felt like an eternity of tense, close-quarters fighting, they finally reached the central control room. Harry's heart leapt as he saw the main computer terminal, knowing that this was where they needed to deploy the EMP device. But as they approached the terminal, a figure stepped out from the shadows, Yaxer, his face contorted with rage and hate. In his hand, he held a strange, glowing weapon, unlike anything Harry had ever seen. "You think you can stop me, human?" Yaxer snarled, his finger tightening on the weapon's trigger. "I am the master of the Warbeasts, and I will not be denied my revenge." He fired, and a searing bolt of energy shot towards Harry's chest. But Lila was faster, throwing herself in front of Harry and taking the full force of the blast. She crumpled to the ground, a smoking hole in her chest. Harry let out a cry of fury and grief, firing his pulse rifle at Yaxer, even as he rushed to Lila's side. But it was too late. The young Ferengi was fading fast, her life slipping away. With her last breath, Lila pressed a data chip into Harry's hand. "The Warbeast control codes," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the alarms blaring throughout the ship. "Use them. Stop this madness." Then she was gone, her eyes staring sightlessly at the ceiling. Harry felt a wave of grief wash over him, but he pushed it aside. There would be time to mourn later. Right now he had a mission to complete. He slotted the data chip into the EMP device, watching as the screen lit up with a series of complex codes and equations. But before he could initiate the pulse, Yaxer was on him again, his weapon spitting bolts of searing energy. Harry and Max were forced to retreat, fighting a running battle through the ship's corridors as they made their way towards the reactor core. If they could detonate the EMP device there, it would take out the entire Ferengi fleet in one fell swoop. But Yaxer was relentless, hounding their every step. And then, just as they were about to reach the reactor room, the Ferengi leader got a clear shot at Max. The bolt of energy caught the loyal dog in the side, sending him tumbling to the ground with a yelp of pain. Harry froze, torn between his mission and his beloved companion. He knew that every second counted, that the fate of the Terran Confederacy hung in the balance, but he couldn't leave Max behind, not after everything they had been through together. In that moment of hesitation, Max made the decision for him. With a last desperate surge of strength, the dog leapt at Yaxer, his teeth bared in a snarl of defiance. The two tumbled over the edge of a walkway, plummeting down into the reactor core below. Harry let out a cry of anguish, but he knew what he had to do. With tears streaming down his face, he slammed the EMP device into the reactor control panel and set the detonation sequence. Then he ran, his heart pounding in his chest, as he raced towards the hangar bay and the waiting ship. He barely made it out before the EMP pulse triggered, the shockwave slamming into the Ferengi fleet and frying every Warbeast implant in range. The creatures, suddenly freed from their master's control, turned on the Ferengi in a frenzy of confusion and rage. The Terran Confederacy forces, seeing their chance, surged forward, their weapons blazing as they tore into the disorganized Ferengi ranks. Within minutes, the once mighty Ferengi armada was in full retreat, their ships limping away from the battlefield in defeat. The Warbeast threat was ended, but the cost had been high. As Harry stumbled from his ship, his face streaked with grime and tears, he saw the shattered remains of the Ferengi flagship drifting in space, a tomb for both Lila and Max. In the weeks that followed, Harry was hailed as a hero, the savior of the Terran Confederacy. But he felt no joy, no sense of triumph. All he could think about was Max, the loyal friend who had sacrificed everything to save him and the galaxy. As he stood before a memorial to the fallen, Harry made a silent vow. He would honor Max's memory by continuing to fight for the safety and freedom of all species, no matter the odds. He would be the shield that protected the innocent, the sword that struck down the wicked. For he knew that, in the vast expanse of space, there would always be new challenges to face, new enemies to confront, and he would be ready for them, no matter the cost. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.